Stop. Right now, before you keep moving through this day, hear me with your whole heart, because something in you has already been marked by what is about to be spoken. You have been carrying a quiet weight that nobody around you has fully named. You keep showing up, you keep smiling when you need to, you keep answering what is asked of you, but inside there has been a place that feels overlooked, delayed, and strangely awake at the same time. It is the kind of pain that does not always look like pain from the outside. It looks like patience. It looks like endurance. It looks like you are doing fine, but you know the truth. You know there has been a holy unrest under the surface, a sense that your life is standing at a doorway that has not opened in the time you expected. By the time we close, you are going to recognize the signs that have been following you. You are going to understand the pattern behind them, and you are going to hear a declaration spoken over your life that is meant to confirm what heaven has already seen. Stay with me, because this is not a general word. This is not for the crowd. This is for the one whose spirit has been leaning forward in silence, waiting for the name to be called. What you are about to hear will name the repeated signals you have been dismissing, and it will also explain why they have not left you alone. You will understand the meaning behind the interruptions, the inner pull, the unanswered ache, and the way your heart keeps returning to the same question even when your mouth stays quiet. You will also hear the difference between being stuck and being set apart, because those are not the same thing. And before this ends, there is a sentence I'm going to speak directly over you that I believe you needed to hear tonight, more than you needed another explanation. This message reached you by appointment, not by accident. There are moments when heaven does not shout louder. It simply arranges the exact words your spirit has been preparing to receive. You may have opened this because the title caught your eye, but you are staying because something deeper recognized itself. The timing is not random. The weight of this hour is not random. You did not arrive here by confusion. You arrived here because something in you is ready to be named. And now, I need to tell you what has been happening around. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life, a guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise, learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. You and within you, because the signs have been there long before you had language for them. You have been noticing things. The same hour keeps visiting you, the same thought returns when you are trying to rest. A name, a place, a memory, a sentence from long ago comes back with unusual force, as if your own life is refusing to remain buried under routine. You have felt emotional waves that seem too large for the moment they arrive in. You have had days where a simple word, a sound, or a passing scene touches something far deeper than it should. That is not because you are fragile. That is because your spirit has been listening even when your mind was busy. You have also felt the strange ache of old conversations losing their power over you. Things you once argued about, defended, feared, or proved now feel thin in your hands. What used to wound you is no longer the whole story. What used to satisfy you is no longer enough. You may have thought that meant you were becoming detached, but in truth, it often means you are becoming clearer. Some attachments fade because your soul is no longer designed to keep kneeling where it once had to survive. Then there are the repeated numbers, the repeated places, the repeated confirmations that appear almost too often to ignore. A receipt, a time, a sign on the road, a page number, a message, a meeting that seems to echo something you were already thinking. You do not need to pretend those things mean nothing. Not everything repeated is random, and not every repetition is noise. Sometimes repetition is the mercy of heaven, tapping again and again until you stop dismissing what your spirit already knows. And here is what those signs actually mean. They are not accusations, and they are not problems to be ashamed of. They are confirmations. They are evidence that something in your life has already begun to move, even if the outer scene has not caught up yet. They are the quiet report that your inner world is being rearranged before the visible world changes. They are not saying you are forgotten. They are saying you are being readied. They are not saying you are late. They are saying the delay was never the final word. So listen carefully, because the next part matters. If even one of those details just landed in you, if you felt that inward recognition rise and say, "Yes, that is me," type the number 888, then come right back to me. What comes next is not merely another sign. There is a pattern beneath the signs, and if you miss the pattern, you will keep misreading your own life. The pattern is this: you have been taught through repetition and pressure to translate almost everything into self-doubt. You have learned to ask whether you are doing enough, whether you are too much, whether you miss something, whether you are somehow behind. That pattern does not usually arrive as a single lie. It arrives as a habit of interpretation. It teaches you to see every closed door as a verdict, every pause as rejection, every silence as proof that you were never truly meant for more. And because you have lived inside that interpretation for so long, even your victories can feel suspicious. When something opens, you wonder when it will close. When someone affirms you, you wonder what they want. When a new path appears, you wonder how it will disappear. That is what this pattern does. It trains the heart to expect loss before it has even received a gift. It keeps the soul standing in the doorway of blessing, braced for impact instead of receiving peace. It has shown up in your life in subtle ways. You may begin something with hope, then immediately start scanning for what could go wrong. You may feel a holy clarity, then argue with it until the clarity becomes harder to hear. You may receive a deep sense that you are being led, then punish yourself for not knowing the full map. The pattern is not laziness, it is not weakness, it is not a lack of faith as a character flaw. It is a learned posture of survival that has overstayed its purpose. And that is why your life can feel heavy even when nothing dramatic is happening, because the cost of this pattern is not only external frustration, the deeper cost is internal fragmentation. A divided heart cannot fully rest. A heart always bracing cannot fully receive. A spirit always preparing for rejection cannot easily recognize welcome when it arrives. So you keep carrying what was meant to be released, and you keep interpreting what was meant to be redemptive as though it were still punishment. But I need you to hear this clearly. It was not your fault that you learned that language. It was not your fault that you adapted to rooms that required you to shrink. It was not your fault that you became fluent in caution. You were responding to what you had been given. You were trying to stay intact. You were trying to remain faithful with the tools you had. And even now, the fact that you can feel the discomfort of this pattern means you are already standing outside it, even if only by a small step. Yet there is still something deeper. The signs were real, the pattern was real, but neither of them is the root. Beneath both of them is an older formation, and I need to speak it through one image so you can recognize it in your own life. Picture a garden that was once tended with care, but over time a wall was built where an opening should have remained. Imagine a living place that was meant to breathe, But someone long ago decided that protection mattered more than light. The garden still lived, but it lived under reduced sky. The roots still reached, but they had to do so around a barrier. The beauty was never gone, but the freedom was interrupted. That is what happened inside you. You were not made to live behind that wall forever, but somewhere along the way, a threshold was treated like a final boundary. A place meant for passing became a place of waiting. A place meant for receiving became a place of guarded survival, and because the wall was built early, you began to call the dimness normal. You began to call the limited light enough. You began to call shrinking wisdom, because shrinking kept you safe. That is the older formation underneath the pattern. Not your essence, but your training. Not your design, but your conditioning. The garden did not stop being a garden because the wall appeared. You did not stop being chosen because a barrier was erected around your life. But the wall changed the way you moved. It changed the way you expected. It changed the way you answered beauty when beauty approached. You started to believe that only certain kinds of growth were allowed, only certain prayers were realistic, only certain joys were safe. And that is why some of your strongest feelings have been mixed with grief. Because part of you knows there is more space than you have been living in. Part of you knows there is more air than you have been breathing. Part of you knows the garden was never supposed to stay enclosed forever. The ache you have been carrying is not only a symptom of loss. It is also the sound of life pressing against what no longer belongs. The dimming has not been the same as death. Hear that. It has been dimming, not ending. It has been narrowing, not erasing. It has been the temporary result of a barrier, not the true measure of your calling. What has felt like finality was often only a structure that should have been opened long ago. And once you can see that, everything changes, because you stop asking whether the garden is alive and start asking where the wall was placed. You may have thought the answer was to force the door open with strain. But strain cannot heal what was formed in survival. You may have thought the answer was to prove your worth until the gate noticed you. But gates do not open because you bleed hard enough in front of them. You may have thought the answer was to become tougher, quieter, smaller, or more acceptable, but none of those things remove a wall that was never built by your hands in the first place. So if that image is speaking to you, if you can feel the garden and the wall, if you can sense the light on the other side of what was built around you, say this with me now: I see it. Now we walk into the return, because the answer is not to invent yourself from nothing. The answer is to come back to what was always true. You do not need to manufacture a new self to be worthy of the life that has been waiting for you. You do not need to become louder than your nature, harder than your conscience, or more impressive than your soul. The return is not performance. It is remembrance. It is the slow and holy act of allowing the false wall to lose its authority over the garden. It is the refusal to keep calling confinement destiny. What you need is not more self-accusation. What you need is steadiness. What you need is not a frantic reinvention. What you need is a return to the place inside you where your spirit no longer agrees to live as if the barrier is permanent. The return begins when you stop negotiating with every old fear as though it deserves equal authority. It begins when you recognize that you are not being asked to become someone else. You are being asked to recover what was covered. So here is what that looks like in practice. In the morning, before your mind reaches for its usual list of demands, pause and place your hand over your chest, not as a ritual of performance, but as a simple act of acknowledgement. Say quietly and without hurry that you are here, that you are willing, that you are no longer agreeing with the old wall as if it were your identity. This is not about forcing feeling. This is about returning to presence. Then, through the day, notice where your mind begins to rebuild the barrier with its own language. Notice the sentence that says, "Not for me, too late for me, not this time, not again." When that sentence appears, Do not worship it. Do not obey it immediately. Let it pass through you without becoming your judge. You are allowed to question the voice that has only ever kept you small. You are allowed to stand still long enough for truth to catch up with your breathing. And in the evening, when the day is quieter, review one place where you saw evidence that the garden is still alive. A moment of peace, a moment of courage, a moment when you did not collapse under the old story. Mark it gently, tend it. This is how return becomes stewardship, not by forcing growth, but by honoring what has already begun to rise. Not by demanding proof every hour, but by keeping company with the life that is returning to you. This is the part most people miss. The return is not dramatic at first. It is often quiet. It is a reorientation, a softening, a willingness to stop calling the wall a home. It is the decision to receive your own life again with less fear and more honesty. And once that begins, you will notice how many things in you were waiting only for permission to breathe. Some of you already feel the relief of that. Some of you feel tears because the message is simpler than you feared and deeper than you expected. That response matters. It means your spirit is not asleep. It means your inner life has not been lost. It means you are not beyond recognition. You are returning. You are returning even now. And if that return is landing in you, if the image of the garden and the wall has shown you what you have been carrying, then speak this short phrase now, out loud if you can. It is sealed. There is still someone specific who comes to mind as this reaches you, and I need to speak to that part of the moment with care. You are thinking of someone who is tired but faithful, someone who has endured more than they ever say, someone whose strength has a tenderness in it that most people overlook. Maybe it is a parent, a friend, a sibling, a mentor, a person who has carried burden without making a spectacle of it. Maybe it is someone gentle in spirit, someone persistent in prayer, someone whose face appears because your heart knows they have been part of the same hidden story. When that person came to mind, it was not random either. Share this with them if it feels right, because sometimes care is delivered by recognition. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is place a word in the hands of the weary and say, "You are seen, you are not forgotten, you are closer than you think." That is not marketing. That is mercy. It is how one life steadies another. And now, before we close, listen to the declaration that has been forming through all of this. You are not the wall. You are not the dimness. You are not the misunderstanding that tried to name your life before truth had its chance. You are the one who has remained. You are the one who has listened. You are the one whose spirit kept turning toward the light, even when the room was narrow. You are the one who was marked to rise from what tried to contain you. You are the one whose name still carries promise. You are confirmed, you are commissioned, you are sent, you are held, you are remembered, you are not late, you are not lost, you are not overlooked. Right now, all across the world, others are receiving this same recognition tonight. You are part of a living hearing that does not always announce itself loudly, and that is exactly why it is real. In quiet rooms, on late walks, in kitchens, in bedrooms, in hospital hallways, in parked cars, in places where nobody else sees the turning, hearts are being steadied by the same truth. You are not alone in this moment. You are not the only one being called back from the edge of forgetting. The same mercy is moving through many lives at once. Walk gently, hold loosely, receive fully, stand in peace, breathe without fear. Let the old wall lose its voice. Let the garden remember its sky. Let the burden fall from the place where it was never meant to stay. It is sealed. You have not come this far to be dismissed by your own mind. You are standing at the edge of the same recognition that has been following you all along. And I need you to stay open for these last words because they are not decoration. They are completion. What has been happening in you was never random, and it was never small. The signs were not there to confuse you. The pattern was not revealed to shame you. The image was not given to entertain your imagination. Every layer was pulling you toward the same truth. Your life has been asking to be received without the old language of fear. That is why you felt the message before you could explain it. That is why the words kept landing in the place where your explanation runs out. That is why the recognition was stronger than the argument. You may still be tempted to stand back from it, to measure it, to make it simpler than it is, but do not do that to yourself now. The heart knows when a word reaches the right room. The spirit knows when a sentence touches what has been waiting in silence. And if you have felt that quiet, internal motion tonight, then you already know that this was not only about understanding, it was about release. It was about permission. It was about letting your own life be seen without calling it strange. So take a breath and let this settle deeper than thought. You do not have to keep translating every holy interruption into failure. You do not have to keep narrating your delay as proof that you were not chosen. You do not have to keep calling every closed passage a verdict against you. The truth is more precise and more merciful than that. What you have been carrying has been a threshold experience, not an ending. A threshold is not a tomb. A threshold is where movement begins to become visible. There is a kind of grief that comes when you realize how long you have lived under a false ceiling. It is a real grief. Do not rush past it. Do not shame it away. The grief says you were made for more air than you had. The grief says you were made for more light than you allowed yourself to expect. The grief says the narrow room was never the full size of your spirit. And once that is named, something tender begins to happen. Because grief stops being only pain and becomes evidence that your heart still remembers its true home. That remembrance is sacred. It may arrive as tears. It may arrive as a sudden stillness. It may arrive as the sense that something in you has been waiting for years to hear a voice that does not argue with your existence. Whatever form it takes, do not despise it. That response is not weakness. It is the body of your life agreeing with what your soul has been trying to say. It is the inside of you saying yes to what the outside has not yet fully caught up to. And yes, I know there are questions still hovering at the edges. You may still wonder how this will look. You may still wonder what changes first, what stays the same, and what must fall away. But not every question is meant to be answered before the blessing is received. Some questions become clearer only after the heart stops resisting the door. Some answers are not delivered as information, but as movement. The first movement is always inward. The first movement is always surrender. The first movement is always the quiet dropping of what has been clenched for too long. You can feel that in you already. You can feel how much energy has been spent managing what never should have been carried alone. You can feel how exhausted the old vigilance has made you. You can feel how much of your strength was tied up in being alert to every possibility of loss. That vigilance may have once protected you, but it cannot lead you forever. Protection is not the same as destination. A wall can keep danger out, but it can also keep life at a distance. And the moment you understand that, you begin to see that your spirit was never asking to remain barricaded. It was asking to breathe. That is why I keep returning to the garden, because the garden inside you is still alive. It has not gone silent. It has not become barren. It has simply been waiting for the wall to lose its authority. And when the wall loses its authority, the first thing that happens is not noise. It is space. Space for honesty. Space for softness. Space for the part of you that was forced to be careful for so long to finally lower its guard without collapsing. There is a holy dignity in that moment. It is not dramatic, but it is profound. It is the dignity of finally admitting that surviving was never the same as living. It is the dignity of seeing that what kept you intact may also have kept you small. It is the dignity of no longer praising the narrowness that cost you peace. And when you honor that truth, you are not rejecting your past. You are no longer making your past the ruler of your future. That shift matters more than you know, because it changes the way you will answer the next door, the next invitation, the next opportunity, the next quiet leading that comes to you without spectacle. You will not have to force yourself into a new identity. You will begin to move from recognition. You will begin to trust what is consistent. You will begin to notice that the same inner voice that has kept returning to you with gentleness has never once been interested in crushing you. It has been calling you back. So let your nervous system learn something new tonight. Let it learn that not every opening leads to danger. Let it learn that not every silence is absence. Let it learn that not every delay is denial. Let it learn that the space ahead of you can be entered without panic. This is how the return becomes embodied. This is how the inner threshold becomes an actual way of living. You do not have to rush it. You do not have to perform it. You only have to remain available to it. And if fear tries to dress itself as wisdom one more time, answer it with quiet strength. Say to it that you have listened long enough to its alarms. Say to it that you know the difference now between caution and captivity. Say to it that you are done building a home inside what was only meant to be a season. That is not rebellion. That is restoration. Restoration does not always feel triumphant at first. Sometimes it feels like exhaustion lifting by a small degree. Sometimes it feels like a thought becoming less cruel. Sometimes it feels like a memory losing its grip. Sometimes it feels like the body exhaling before the mind has caught up. But do not underestimate those small mercies. They are how heaven often restores a life. Not by spectacle first, but by relief. Not by thunder first, but by surrender. Not by overwhelming you, but by meeting you precisely where your strength has thinned. And if this is touching the place in you that has been most guarded, then let it. Do not harden against the tenderness that is arriving now. Tenderness is not always fragility. Sometimes it is the first sign that the wall is no longer necessary. Sometimes it is the evidence that you can remain open without losing yourself. Sometimes it is the beginning of a confidence that does not need to shout to be real. I want you to notice something else too. The recognition you felt tonight was not only emotional, it was relational. It felt like being known. And that matters, because a person can hear 1,000 explanations and still remain untouched until something inside them senses, finally, I am seen. That is what this moment has been doing for you. It has not been flattering you. It has been seeing you. It has not been telling you what you wish to hear. It has been calling what is true in you by name. That is why the pressure is easing even as the word becomes clearer. Truth does that. It steadies where confusion strained. It gathers what was scattered. It puts weight back into places where you had begun to feel unreal. The more you let it land, the more your whole being remembers its center. And from that center, you will make choices differently. You will speak differently. You will stop giving too much authority to voices that were never qualified to define your life. There is wisdom in that. There is peace in that. There is also a kind of beautiful courage that grows when you stop defending the wall and start defending the garden. That is the real change. Not a sudden perfection, not a grand performance, not a forced certainty, but a deeper allegiance. You begin to belong to what is alive in you. You begin to protect what is true instead of protecting what is familiar. You begin to let go of the false security that was costing you your joy. Some of what you lose in that process will feel uncomfortable at first. Old habits of thought rarely leave quietly, but they do not have the final say. The life rising in you is stronger than the story that kept you cramped. The voice that has been calling you is steadier than the fear that tried to answer first. And if you keep returning to that voice, you will begin to notice how quickly your insides change when they are no longer asked to live under a false ceiling. You do not need to rush your healing to prove anything. You do not need to explain your pace to people who were never listening to your soul in the first place. You do not need to apologize for recognizing what is changing. You are allowed to honor the becoming. You are allowed to let it be slow. You are allowed to let it be real. You're allowed to let it be yours. And now I speak to the deepest part of your identity, the part that has remained even attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you. And strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuzazara readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.